Hello, and welcome to the eighth episode of Random Musings. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do subscribe to our podcast. And thank you for all the love that you've given to the last 7 episodes. If you're watching it on YouTube, hi. Today's guest is someone that I admire the most as a comedian and as a writer. And we have back-to-back people from Calcutta after Anirban Das Gupta in the last episode. Today's comedian, today's guest is also a fantastic person from the city of joy. Give it up for Saurav Mehta.
Woo! Hello, buddy.
Hi,
Thank you
Saurav.
so much for having me. Buddy, I
Hi.
can't believe you made this programming error, but here I am. Thank you so much.
Okay. Let's head straight into our conversation, Saurav. One of the things I've explored a lot in this series so far is hometown of people, like where they come from, where their childhood was spent, because I genuinely feel that sort of shapes everyone's life. And before I even talk about Calcutta, I want to talk about a very specific place in Calcutta. Okay. To give context to people, when it comes to higher education, when it comes to colleges, there are many colleges in India which everyone in India knows of, like they are nationally famous. But there are very few schools that are nationally famous. You think of schools like Mayo College Ajmer, or you think of Doon School Dehradun, or DPS Puram, Bombay Scottish, PSBB Chennai, etc., etc. Uh, One school that I have seen right from my childhood, because I used to follow all the quiz shows like DQC and ESPN Sports Quiz, etc. And that school I will never forget. That school had so much. I was so much in awe, of this school called La Martiniere Calcutta. Okay, in fact, I'll tell you a very interesting thing. That the first time I went to Calcutta, it was in 2013 or 14 while I was still working. So it was a business trip, and I met my friend from Calcutta, incidentally also named Saurav. Okay, Saurav Bhattacharya in that case. And I asked Saurav to, apart from like he was showing me all the traditional touristy places like Victoria Memorial or Howrah Bridge and everything. And I said, can you please show La Martiniere Calcutta to me? And he was like, man, school kaun dekhta hai?
Uh,
Like, I really want to see. So we saw it from like the ground floor, so to speak, from the road. And then he said, I'll give you a better view. So we went to there is a flyover, right next to the
yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah.
And we stopped his bike and he said, Dekh le La Martiniere Calcutta. I've never done like school as a touristy thing
True, yeah.
ever. And I have met a few people from Navatnia in my life, and I've been equally impressed from all of them. So it has lived up to its hype, so to speak. But you're the first person from the school on Random Musings, so why not start with La Martiniere Calcutta? Saurav, I would love to hear your opinion on your school, how it shaped your life. Is it the La Martiniere that's in my mind, or is it not worth the hype? Anything that you want to talk about the school, over to you, sir.
Buddy, so obviously I bring a totally unbiased view about my amazing school. And I will just tell you how amazing it is. Buddy, I genuinely love my school. Okay. And it's like, you know how people love football clubs, or I don't know, they love celebrities or anything besides your country and family in a way. If there's one thing that I really love and really admire, and I'm really glad that I was part of it, is my school. And there are like a lot of reasons for it, because I mean, starting with, just to give you and people some background, like uh, I mean, my family, uh, growing up, we weren't like upper middle class. We were kind of not lower middle class, but somewhere in between of those two. And to go to a school like La Martiniere was literally like me lucking out. And I genuinely mean this, because the way like my life would have been if I hadn't gone to La Martiniere would have been very different. Uh, I'm not saying it would have been better or worse, but it would have been very different. And I am glad that it went this way, because growing up, like my school has in many ways given me everything that you require to, take risks, be smart, be considerate, etc., etc. And I know it sounds a little like hyperbole, and you know me in general, I don't go so hyperbole about anything, but for me, the school did have that kind of an impact, because like for example, I was sent to the school because my mom, okay, she studied in Gujarati all her life, and then suddenly in college they changed the curriculum to English. Okay, so my mom had this revolution in her head that one day when I have a child, I will send him or her to English school. So she sent me to the school. Firstly, the odds of someone like me getting an admission from my family, I think, are not that high. And then we somehow, I don't know, God's grace or something happened. Hopefully my parents didn't bribe anyone, not that I'm aware of. That's just a bad joke. Anyone from the Martiniere Authority, if they're watching. But yeah, and it happened. And the reason I think it played such an important role is, it's a little bit like a cult. And let me explain that, okay? Because you're a kid, growing up, you just kind of imbibe the energy. I think more than specific words, you kind of imbibe just the, energy that people are giving you. So every morning in assembly, they used to keep telling us, this great PR monologue that you had for my school. That's essentially what they told us, that you guys are special. You guys are supposed to be this. You guys are best. And so we were like, yeah, maybe we are. We weren't. But if someone keeps telling you, you're like, yeah, maybe we do things, okay? And then of course, you look at your seniors, and what used to happen was, like, in Calcutta also, like, a school had this air, okay, that dude, we're from La Martiniere, we're Martinians, don't mess with us, okay? Not in like a fighting way or anything, but like we used to go for fest or anything that we're best. So I think that confidence kind of translated to me growing up, like even this communication. It's any communication skills that I've picked up are from my school. And this confidence that, I keep harping on is because, you've lived enough life now. Most of the decisions are based on confidence. Most of people getting impressed by you, or, you taking the leap of faith sometimes is just confidence. And in that moment, you don't know if things are going to work out or not. But because, from childhood, people have been telling you, no, there's something in you. We don't know if there is or not, but that placebo kind of works. So like, I've done some random things in life, and I feel like every place that I've reached in, I don't think I would have reached there if I wasn't part of this school. So that La Martiniere for Calcutta, if the principal or anyone's watching, send me the, okay, yeah, thank you.
You also do talk about La Martyr in your stand-up, Saurav, and you're obsessed with some of the notorious slash famous alumni of La Martiniere, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, someday people will see that on YouTube whenever it releases.
Yes.
Uh, I want to go further back in time, Saurav. And since you mentioned that your mom studied Gujarati all her life, and that also makes you unique in some sense that you're from Calcutta, but you're not a Bengali. Okay.
Yeah.
Did that have an impact in your life, like your Gujarati roots and some of the things that you might have learned? Because again, like I've said this before on the series, that no matter how much you deny your ethnicity or your culture or where you come from, it does play a part, whether consciously or subconsciously, in our life. And I'm sure we'll talk about your childhood in Calcutta, etc. later, but I just want to go chronologically. And I'm very interested to know, do you ever feel at this stage now that somewhere, you being originally a Guju or a Gujarati, did it play any role in your life, or things that you learned that you think you learned because you were a Gujarati?
But 100%. Growing up, you don't realize, like you're saying, you don't realize the impact your community or your relatives are having. You just think it's your parents. But even the way, I think, community to community, how, parents bring up their child kind of reflects much later, I feel. So for me, as stereotypical as it sounds, I feel like I am fairly good with money. Uh, Even if I'm not earning a lot, I do end up saving a lot. I'm very meticulous about my investments. I have emergency fund. We've had discussions about stock mein ha dale, wo dale, everything. That's all my Guju roots. And, a lot of these risks also that I've been able to take, like quitting my business and just suddenly landing up in Bombay to do stand up, even quitting my job initially, and things like that, to a lot of people it might seem random, and even to me at that time, you're not sure of the outcome. But one of the reasons that I'm able to take those decisions is because these financial like mindset that you have kind of helps you, because you know that, okay, I have enough funds to let me take this risk for 1 or 2 years, okay? And I'm not one of those people who, I need some sense of stability and balance. I need some sense of backup. I'm not one of those, super talented or super ambitious people that, dude, I'm going to give up everything and from tomorrow, let's do this. No, I need some sort of a plan, at least some sort of, okay, there's a, you know, safety net in a way. And there is where my Guju roots totally come in. And uh, recently, and this is going to sound, and I'm a little embarrassed saying it, but this is my peak Gujarati view of life. I feel like, you know how stock prices move in the stock market? I feel like that's how our life works, where if you see how stock prices move, right, they're not just always going up. They go up, they come down. For a lot of time, they just stay flat, then they again go down. And I think, and you know, all the gains that happen are like lumpy. They come in a day or 2 days or a week as such. And I think as as poetic or wannabe poetic as it sounds, I feel like much of life is like that. You know, there are times when you feel you're going down, you're putting in a lot of work, but you feel like nothing is changing personally, money wise, anything. But then suddenly, you know, there's one day something happens. It's one call. It's, you know, Kumar Varun saying, "Hey, come on, Random Musings." It's you know, Abish saying, "Hey, come write for me." Anything, you know, it's just like one day, 1 hour can change everything.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
that's my
yeah.
Guju impact on my life.
So true. So true. In fact, you and I have had long discussions about pragmatic decisions when it comes to making money and having an emergency fund and planning your life around these things and not take leap of faith, but like
Yeah,
have a safety
yeah,
net
yeah.
somewhere. You talked about while you were saying you casually said how you quit your job and you quit your business and you quit everything. So why not set everything in place with my next question, which is the classic how comedy happened. Okay, because I know that you were like we discussed, you grew up in Calcutta, La Martiniere, and then you studied in Bangalore, I guess, in Christ College, and then you had a job. It's a very good high paying job. So how did comedy happen? How did you end up in Bombay doing stand up and writing and everything else? Take me through that journey, sir.
So basically, you know, I was in Hyderabad. I'd been doing a job for about 4 years. The job was great. Money was fairly good. I was also doing well. But I think, like much of, like, you know, like most of us, I didn't want a boss all my life. And I think, again, the Gujarati roots also come in. My dad used to keep telling me that, what, all your life, you just want a boss? Like, so then one day I was like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job. And I was like, let's see. The plan at that time was I'm going to go back to Calcutta and see if I like my dad's business or not, so that to figure out future. And the
Mhm.
other thing that I wanted to do at that time was I wanted to study for my GMAT, and I had basically not done my MBA because the plan was I wanted to go abroad and do my MBA. Okay. Till then, I had done everything to kind of help me build an MBA profile, you know, because these schools out there, you need this. So I came back to Calcutta, and after that, compared to a job, you do have more time, even though you're working with your dad. So I used to do a lot of, you know, theater, and I used to do a lot, like I used to be funny even in school and everything. So when I came back, just for some reason, I started putting up Facebook posts. Like I used to put up one liners, and a lot of my friends started liking them, and more than, you know, normal. At that time, even I understood engagement. Even if I didn't have it, I understood, you know, social media engagement. So I was like, oh, this is good. And then what I started doing was on those updates, because on Facebook a lot of times people just copy paste, right? So I was like, man, they need to know that I wrote it. I wrote it. Okay, so I just started using a hashtag thing, hashtag original. And then what happened is, as I got more traction, then I made a page on Facebook called hashtag original, and I started posting things there, and some of the things went viral. So I was like, man, maybe there's something there. And while that was happening, because I was back in Calcutta, you know, I was looking to do theater, I was looking to do other things also. So one of my friends was organizing a concert for Pen Masala. It's that a cappella band, right? So he was getting them down to Calcutta for 2 shows, and he was like, "Listen, there are 2 breaks in the show, and I don't have anything, you know, to fill those breaks, and I don't have budget, you know." Uh, Nothing's changed as such. But so he was like, "Do you want to do stand up? You know, you used to do stand up." I was like, "Yeah, why not?" So me and this another friend from school, we used to do stand up, those kind of things in school. So we were like, "Yeah, let's do it." So because at that time you don't know that writing a set takes time. So just agreed to do 10 minutes of stand up at GD Birla Sabhagar, which has like 600 people. So it should have been thought of a little bit more, I feel, in hindsight. But you know, just wrote something in like a day or two. And you know, it had been long since kind of held a mic in from a performance point of view, right? So we were like, "Arey, where are these open mics happening? Let's figure out." Okay, me and my other friend, and we found one open mic. and there was Saurav Ghosh there at the open mic, and we were just new people. We were like, hey, we want to do and all. And but he then did the open mic there. It went well, went overtime. But I was killing it. Like honestly, all the other comics on that day were bombing. I'm sorry, guys, but you know you all were. So I think Ghosh also let me, he's like new guy, let him, go like, so let me do 1 or 2 minutes more. Then show went well. And at the show, another friend of mine saw me. It's a little bit of how nepotism helps, guys. And he was organizing a show with Kenny. And this was at Kala Mandir with 1,000 people. And he was like, hey, I don't have a host. There's an opening act, but I don't have a host, don't have budget. So would you want to do it? I said, yes, of course. And I was so new to comedy back then that firstly, again, agreeing to 1,000 seater is not good thinking. And I was so new that I didn't even use my earlier set. I wrote a new set thinking that in stand up you can't repeat sets just from one show to another show. So I wrote full new set. And again, one day before the performance, I just landed up at the open mic and Ghosh is like, again, you're here? What is happening? I was like, I have one more show. And he's like, which one? I was like, opening for Kenny. Because again, at that time, I didn't realize that, to even open for someone like Kenny, you need to go through the process. You need tight 5 minutes. You need to climb up the ladder. So I just went, performed again on the show day. Thankfully, luck or whatever it was, show went very well. And I remember, meeting Kenny also backstage. And he was like, hey, man, you've been doing it for long. I was like, no, it's been literally 2 shows like this and that and 2 more open mics. And that happened. So then I was like, okay, maybe I can, do stand up. So then I started, just attending a few more open mics in Calcutta. And what I used to do that time was just randomly, I used to message all these comics, okay, like Abish, Tanmay, Papa CJ, Veer Das, anyone I'd heard of or who had come down to Calcutta. I used to just message them saying, hey, either give me an opening spot. And then I got a little more greedy. So I was like, what if I get a writing gig in Bombay? Because I know Ghosh and everyone used to talk about how Bombay's comedy scene, you need to go do spots there. So I was like, what if I get a writing gig? And also I'll try comedy there, 2, 3 months, see what happens. So I messaged like this. And I remember Tanmay said that I'll send a copy test. And I was too lazy, so I didn't do the copy test. Abish, for some reason, just said yes. Like, I'll send a link of my stand up and, my jokes that I'd written on that page and everything. And he agreed to meet me. He was performing in Calcutta for some show. He met me. And then he gave me a writing job at Son of Abish. So I must tell everyone out there that Abish is a great recruiter, but in terms of hiring process, he needs to improve because there's nothing. I just sent a text and he's like, yeah, you seem funny. And he was so sweet. He met me in Calcutta and then he said, yeah, come to Bombay for 3 months. What do you call? There's a writing gig for you. Of course, it didn't pay very well. And, at that time he was like, hey, it only pays this much and all. But I was just looking at a fun, like 3 month break. So then I came to Bombay and, Son of Abish started. It was supposed to be a 3 month writing gig. And then, how one thing leads to another. And here I am about 3.5 years later.
Oh man, I just there are just so many things that I keep finding patterns in people. And I remember Anirban Dasgupta in the last episode said how he out of nowhere randomly ended up in the same auditorium that you talked about. His first open mic was in GD Birla, and even yours was there. Wow, wow, crazy. Oh man. And then sort of Comicstaan happens, right? You're doing comedy in Bombay, you're writing for Son of a Beach, you're doing open mic. I remember you from those days, and you're killing it, and everything is great. And then Comicstaan happens. So I want to talk about Comicstaan, and I'll tell you my perspective there is that Comicstaan or such events or such competitions do help people in getting an exponential jump. And I want to explain what I mean is that when you do something at a set process, there you do have a growth, but it's linear. Okay, you need some external factor to somehow, whether a viral video or just some amazing, you land at the right place at the right time, or one video or something that you somewhere you appear and you suddenly become famous. But otherwise, it's a linear this thing. Like I believe I relate to it more because my career, so to speak, started because of a competition. Because Rahul and I went to YouTube Comedy Hunt and we won. So suddenly, compared to a normal route, maybe that gave me an accelerated path or an express entry into comedy. And when Comicstaan had first come, people, a lot of us were talking about it because this was this new thing where a bunch of comedians and all pretty successful in their own right were competing against each other, and you're again the first Comicstaan sort of how do I put it, a student from the school of Comicstaan to appear on Random Musings, and a Comicstaan alumnus. That's one way to put it. So I now want your opinion on how that journey was. How do you think it helped you? Anything about Comicstaan?
I mean, firstly, when they had approached us for Comicstaan, nobody had any idea that it would be this big. At that time, even doing shows like this was, should you do it? Should you not do it? I'm sure you remember a lot of people were like, maybe this is not the way to go. Like people were giving a lot of that advice. But for me at that time, like I remember I was some 8 months into comedy. So I was like, I don't have much to lose anyway. A lot of like people were concerned that, oh, my material will go away and everything. I had 5 minutes then, at max 7 minutes. So I was like, that's okay. So Comicstaan for me that way was great for two reasons. One was, like you said, it gave me a push uh, so early in my career, which is kind of still helping because I haven't really put out any videos after Comicstaan. So it definitely helped in that way. But more than that, I feel like because I was so new into stand up at that point, it kind of made me realize that, you know what, I can do it because we were literally writing a set in a week, which, as you know, takes so much more time otherwise. Even I am testament to that. After Comicstaan, I have just been extremely lazy. Compared to like there in a week, we were churning out 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and it was fairly tight. Uh,
Hmm.
so that, so more than anything, it really helped me in realizing that, you know what, maybe you can give this profession a try a little more seriously because you may not be the best, you may be this, you may be that, but you do have something which is working constantly. Because till then, you're just doing open mics and I was still so new that you're not even sure if you're funny. One is being
Hmm.
funny, like, just with your friends. The other is, can I do this professionally? Am I funny enough to, even if it's at a small scale, can I do that? And Comicstaan helped me, kind of understand that okay, this is maybe my cup of tea, and I
Hmm.
should go ahead with comedy.
And then, of course, Comicstaan happens, and then you continue doing open mic and comedy, and you're obviously slightly more or maybe exponentially more popular than before Comicstaan. But and I'm so happy that we are going to talk about it next is the topic of writing. Okay, because when you look at stand-up comedy from outside, someone might think that going on stage and making jokes is the only way uh, you make money in stand-up. Okay, apart from like once you reach a certain stage, you make branded shoots and branded posts, etc., etc., etc. But a lot of time, a lot of comedians do writing gigs, especially at initial part of their career, where, like you started saying, you said you wrote for Son of a Beach and you wrote for a lot of other comedians and other brand projects, etc. So a lot of people from outside might feel that once you're doing stand up, you're only on stage and you're going there and cracking jokes, and I don't know how much you're earning or how do you earn, etc., etc., etc. You don't earn much. Let me be very
Yeah.
clear with anyone who's watching this. You don't earn much just doing open mics. There's no way you can earn much. But there's one good way of earning money, which is writing. Okay, which is wherein you either write for branded projects or you write for other comedians projects, or for variety shows, like you said, Son of a Beach. It is one way to earn money in comedy, okay, which a lot of people don't know about when they look at stand-up comedy from outside. And you're one of the most prolific writers in Indian comedy for the past more than I think at least 3 years, because I remember we worked on a project together for a brand, and I know that you constantly work for a lot of branded projects, etc. I feel it's a good opportunity for us to discuss this aspect of a stand-up comedian's career, because for anyone who's planning to start a career in stand-up comedy, I think this will be very, very helpful, and there's no one better than you to talk about it. So Saurabh, I want to know from you about writing as a profession, about writing as a way of making money apart from doing comedy on stage.
Firstly, Bombay is expensive. Yeah, that's that's point number one. So writing is, like you said, a great, I think, side gig for people who want to do stand up. And like you said, and we've discussed this number of times, making money in stand up initially is very difficult. It's close to zero because most open mics don't pay. Uh, people aren't really going to pay good money to see you because you're not famous yet. So unless, you put out a video and you go viral, you're not going to get shows that pay you enough to lead a fairly good life. So writing that way is I would say, actually a great hack to continue doing stand up without the pressures of continuously being like, man, is my emergency fund going to get over? Man, should I get a real job? Anything. This is the closest you can have to, both having the cake and eating the cake. When I came to Mumbai, I of course came via, Abish gave me an opportunity to write in Son of Abish. And so for me, that kind of opened the door to doing stand up. And then once that gig got over, also, I was like, okay, if I want to hang around, I mean, I had been earning fairly decent money for 7 years. So I was like, I can't not earn at all. It has to start. So then because I'd written Son of a Beach, and also I saw other comics also doing it, like Anirban, also started like that, used to write a lot and everything. So I started picking up writing gigs because I was like, this is a good way to at least maintain a decent cash flow. I'm not saying that you have to you have to love writing. Like, writing is not the number one reason why I'm in Mumbai. It's always going to be stand up. That is the real love. But this kind of, helps me continue doing that. And even, like you said, branded projects and everything. A lot of times, I'm not saying a lot of brands come to me, but even on Instagram and everything, a lot of times you don't want to do branded stuff. Okay, but a lot of times the bank balance dictates your decisions. And I kind of, use writing, the money that I get from writing, as a cover, that okay, I don't have to do like anything and everything just because I need money. And also another thing that kind of helps you in writing is, dude, you get to write with so many fantastic people, you know and like, I have learned so much initially, when even as a stand-up, initially, like, I've written with, for like everyone and everyone. Okay. So you learn so much, because even when you're in a writer's room, say if it's a bigger show, or even if, say, you're just writing for another comedian and he or she is giving you feedback, you're like, oh yeah, I never noticed that. And you don't have to write them as notes, but you will see over years that it helps your craft. It helps your craft. So that way, writing is something that I think a lot of people who want to come and, pursue stand up should definitely, I think, give this a shot.
And then when you were talking about, I found one small thing somewhere there where you said that one of your plans was to go to the US or somewhere else to do your MBA. You thought you'll take GMAT and go abroad. That obviously didn't happen. But I know you went to Harvard for some reason. What was that about? Like, how did Saurav Mehta end up in Harvard, and what happened there? I'm really curious to know.
Man, Saurav Mehta ending up at Harvard is the randomest line I think you have said in a long, long time. Uh, So I used to work, my job, I used to work for this computational biochemistry research lab, and I used to do recruitment for them, but back-end recruitment and sourcing, which includes profiling and things like that. But it also involved a lot of interaction with, their New York team and scientists. And I think as a perk, essentially, people used to do well. They used to send us to New York for a few weeks there. And during one of those trips, that was around that, like, America has this system, right, that they around fall, they have a bunch of career fairs. So, and my company used to essentially only hire from Ivy Leagues or that kind of colleges. Okay. So there was a career fair at Harvard, and they were like, hey, do y'all want to go to this career fair? And we were like, yes, of course. So we landed up at Harvard. We were there with our New York boss and our team boss. And being at Harvard was kind of surreal, and even that job in general was surreal, because you are judging people who are genuinely far smarter than you. And there is no shame in admitting that they are leaps and bounds smarter than you. And imagine I, taking their CV and be like, nah. And that's another level of like power that should not be given, I feel, to people like me. But yeah, so going to Harvard was kind of freaky, because just walking around there, and you're like, man, I would have, like, what is happening? And
Yeah.
to be fair though, at that time, essentially, and this is going to sound a little crazy and maybe too confident, But somewhere deep down, I was cocky enough to believe that MBA also, I'll get into Harvard or Stanford or something. Not possible now in hindsight that I look at it. But I was cocky enough at that time to believe it. So I was like, wow, if it doesn't actually happen, here I am.
Oh man, that's such a wonderful story because it's unfair story. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where you're like, I used to have so many these conversations when I used to work in a corporate like setup, and we used to think like life is not fair, dude. And then this story just sort of sort of corroborates that theory. When Saurav Mehta from I know La Martiniere is a great school, but let's not judge like how it graduates. But on a serious note, that's very relatable. And I don't talk about this phase of my life much often. But when I was working in my first job post MBA, there was a point, and if comedy hadn't happened, if I hadn't met Rahul Subramanian, I would have for sure, I would have ended up in a B school in the US because I was very serious about, if not a B school, some masters in the US, because there was a point where I really wanted to, maybe go to Wharton or Harvard or UPenn or, any of those colleges. And it just struck me when I said this, because when I went to Boston last to last year, one of the things that was on top of my agenda was to go and see Harvard Business School and like Harvard University. I took a photo also sitting outside there. And yeah, so from the Martiniere to Harvard, what a what a wonderful loop has closed. Age is something that I really want to talk about with you, Saurav, because we have discussed it offline. So why not do it online as well? Is that there are things that you learn or you realize only with age. And let me explain that. There are some processes and learnings that cannot be expedited. Again, just like when we talked about comedy or any career where either an external factor comes and helps you grow, the same thing happens in life as well. Unless a drastic life experience happens when you're young, assuming you are having a very normal average life, there are some things you will only learn through age. Unless say you lose one of your parents when you were really young, then your life drastically changes, or you meet with an accident or some sort of weird experience happens. But for the sake of this discussion, I'm saying an average life of an average human. When you're in 20 and when you're at 30, your life perspective or the way you look at things, the way you approach things completely changes. And I've touched upon it in this series as well with Rahul. I remember where we said how we look at life now in a very different way than how we used to look at it in our early 20s. You are one of those people who I talk a lot about uh, how we look at comedy, how we look at money, how we look at internet, how we look at making content. There are so many things that you and I will not do because we've reached a stage where some things just don't seem exciting enough or enticing enough to be done. And of course, our approach towards relationship, towards family, our priorities in life, they keep evolving. And no matter how much you tell someone who is younger than you, or especially significantly younger than you, they will not realize what you're saying, because we were the same when we were at that age. I'm not saying we are very old, but all I'm saying is every year, with every passing year, your approach changes, your life changes. I want to know your perspective in terms of comedy, in terms of life. How do you think age has sort of affected the way you approach things?
That's the thing, when you're in your 20s and say someone like us in their early 30s comes and gives gyan, you're like, kuch bhi bol raha hai, I'll be different. Then you reach your 30s and you're like, no, that guy or girl was right. And I think that's essentially what has happened, where a lot of the stereotypes again are true. Like in my 20s, I was so much more confident. I I was I was definitely dumber. I was definitely poorer, but man, I had confidence. I was like, I can achieve anything and everything. As opposed to now, when I am definitely smarter compared to who I was earlier. I'm definitely wealthier than what I was earlier. But now, in many ways, I feel the confidence kind of drops. And it's not just fear. People say that, oh, it's fear of failing, or it's not that. It's just, I think somehow age kind of does calm your adrenaline in a way. If I was younger and I had, spent 2 or 3 years without releasing a stand up clip, man, that would have not been okay. I'm not talking about any external pressures, and I'm not saying it's still right or wrong. It's you should definitely upload it, but I'm saying the older me can still process it. I feel that yes, things are maybe not going the way it should have been. You're maybe not doing the things that you should be, but it's not a textbook. There will be phases when you kind of when even if you want to do things for whatever reason, things are not happening. It's you being lazy, it's things not working out, whatever. But I think age kind of gives you that, understanding that, sometimes you will miss buses. You can't catch all the buses. You will miss them. You can either keep, feeling pain about the fact, or be like, okay, maybe this is what it is right now. I hope it improves. I'll work towards it improving. But if it doesn't, I still gotta have fun. I still gotta live my life, you know. And that's why I think even the pragmatic element kind of, kicks in and it helps you. Uh, that you're like, because dude, everything, everyone you talk to all the time is negative, including yourself. Uh, and age, I think, at times, right, when it's becoming too much, when you find yourself in that hole, I feel like the experience of age kind of tells you, listen, there have been times when you've had a breakup and you thought you'll never find a girl. You found a girl. There have been times when your boss told you you're an idiot, but then you ended up getting the best promotion or the best height. There have been times when people told you you're not funny, but then you got, the sweetest messages from people saying, hey, you changed my day. So it might be shitty in the moment, but once you zoom out and after a while, it'll be okay. And I think that ability to feel it'll be okay has only come over age for me. But on the flip side, buddy, one of the things that I miss about being younger is the confidence, for sure. Because, like we discussed earlier, that you can achieve a lot of things by just backing yourself. Uh, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love doing stand up, because when I am on stage, it's the most uninhibited and it's the most confident version of me. And it's kind of a reflection of who I was earlier. And that's why I love being on stage, because I'm like, oh, old Saurav is back.
Yeah, so true. I think with age, you're right. You lose the confidence that you said, but you gain surety where you're like, it's okay. I know what I have to do. So the external pressure for validations and the so-called pressure, especially as an artist, that those things start affecting you less than it would have affected us if we were in, like, we were teenagers or like people in our early 20s. And like you said, like 3 years without a YouTube video earlier would have been very, very, very scary, but not much anymore, right?
One of the things that I don't think even you remember, okay, but one conversation that a lot of times I play in my head is, uh, I am still more hyper than you are, right? I am always like, buddy, ye nahi ho raha, ye kya ho raha hai? And I remember once we were having a conversation that, buddy, what if comedy doesn't work? Should I do this? What if should I quit stand up in this much time? And what's that thing? And you were like, buddy, why are you worrying? कुछ ना कुछ तो हो ही जाता है ना.
Yeah.
इतने साल पहुंच गए यहाँ तक तो कुछ ना कुछ तो हो ही जाता है ना. And buddy, I'm not joking. I remember that so many times, when I'm so under stress and I'm like, what if stand up doesn't work? What if the writing gigs stop coming? Maybe my followers are less. What will happen? And then I remember your voices. I'm like, it's been 11 years of my working life. Kuch na kuch somehow always
Yeah.
happens only. So
Yeah.
ho hi jayega. So I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I say that to a lot of my friends because I genuinely believe in it. And that also comes from age and experience, I believe, because you're like, दुनिया बदल रही थी, सब कुछ बदल रहा था, but we managed, right? So we'll manage. Because in comedy, especially over the last few years, there was this entire discussion about, oh, this is a bubble. Let's make use of it before the bubble bursts and before stand comedy is not a thing anymore. And I'm like, we'll do something else. When people were saying do an MBA, we did. When people said do a job, we did. When pandemic came, we did our job. We're still here. Something else comes, we'll figure. We survived when Instagram wasn't there. We're surviving when it's there. Will again, if it's not there, it's like beach mein. I remember there was a news that Instagram will shut down and what will we do? And we're like, we were there before Instagram, very much happy. So we'll be happy later also. Like, how is your career entirely dependent on a social media platform? Then you're doing something wrong, brother. Like, oh God, yeah. that confidence, I think, with I'm digressing a bit, but when you succeed in one area in life, that sort of also gives you the confidence to succeed in other areas as well. Like, that I am someone who can do things, I will do things. No need to be like the
Yeah.
the panicky sort. Oh man, we talked about Harvard, we talked about Gujarat, we talked about Martiniere, and I want to circle back and go back to Calcutta because it has to end with Calcutta. We started from there. Now, we still did not talk about your childhood outside La Martiniere, so we'll talk about that. And then I'm sure, just like our opinion changes about people, about your country, like you said, about humanity in general with age, I'm sure your opinion about Calcutta would have also changed with time and with where you are in life and what you want to do in life. So I want to take you back to the city of Calcutta and how you see the city as a kid growing up, and then how you see the city when you're doing comedy there, and how you see the city now when your career is totally not dependent on Calcutta.
Growing up, I think Calcutta is an amazing city to be in because I think it gives you a lot of experiences that I'm not saying other cities don't, but have really shaped who I am. Like there is really something in the air of Calcutta because even as a kid, I used to be so interested in politics. Not that I wanted to become a politician, but I was really aware. Like even when I was like in class 8, class 9, class 10, I used to watch political stuff. Like NDTV used to have those big fights with Radhit Sardesai. I used to watch all of that back then because there is something in the air. And besides that, even the other things like theater, a lot of the reason why I am able to do what I am doing right now is because I did a lot of theater growing up in Calcutta, and not just performing but also watching. As kids, we used to randomly go to watch theater. Didn't understand most of the dialogues, but you're like, oh, tiny tiny things help. Even something like there used to be book fairs in Calcutta. I don't know if it's a popular thing in other cities, but there used to be book fairs in Calcutta, and we used to just go. That was a legit activity for us. Go half a day, go one a day, and just roam around a book fair. So that way, growing up in Calcutta was amazing. And most of my childhood, anyway, honestly, I just played cricket. And then I did all these other things. So growing up, it was fantastic. Then I went out. I went to Bangalore. I went to Hyderabad. I worked. Then when I came back after 7 years to again, work with my dad in his business, that's when kind of the reality of Calcutta hit, where you do always hear your parents and relatives saying, "Man, Calcutta is a very tough place to do business." My mom is from Mumbai, and all her life she cribs about how people in like how my dad, how my family members, how people in Calcutta do, and I'm like, "What is she saying? We are so fast." But then when you come out and then when you go back to Calcutta, you're like, this is a really tough place to work at. And listen, I am not saying it from any bitching point of view or Calcutta sucks or anything like that. But just for me personally, because I had worked outside and things are unfortunately or fortunately, I felt like way more proficient outside. When you come back to Calcutta, the slowness of its uh, work cycle does get to you. Like, this should happen now. Come on, it's business. There's money on the line. Can we get things moving? But so that's why when I went back to Calcutta again, and yeah, I tried stand up. I wanted to do GMAT, get out for MBA and everything. I think one of the reasons deep down was that I was pretty sure that this is not the city where I want to spend the rest of my life. I can come back here to retire. I still love the city, but this is not where I see myself growing professionally. I remember there was another friend of mine who'd also just quit his job and come back, and we were like, bro, this is not happening. We need to figure something. Maybe we'll have to do a job again, or let's make a startup and shift to Bangalore. We were looking for in many ways excuses to get out of the city because personally it's great. My parents are there, a lot of my friends are there. It's very comfortable because you know everything out there. But just work wise, again, and I'm not meaning it in a bitchy way if anyone's watching, I'm not trying to bash Calcutta or anything, but it just didn't work for me.
Yeah. No, I see, like, on my from my purely academic point of view, from all my friends from Calcutta, and there is a clear pattern. Like all of them love Calcutta, all of them love going there for a few days,
Yeah.
but no one really wants to work there. Like even, and I'm not just talking about comedy. It's even people who are doing business, like you said, some of them who have proper corporate job, like an IT job, would not want to work in the Calcutta office of that company. Like they would want to move to Bangalore or Delhi or Bombay because they are like, yeah, that shrug. It's like
Yeah.
it's a great city to just maybe spend a few days, meet your family members, eat, have fun. But to make a career there, it's slightly more difficult. It's again, I'm with you that
Yeah.
this is just
Yeah.
our very small generalization. I assume there are millions exceptions to this. This is just our feeling. So don't be like, we love Calcutta.
We love Calcutta.
Okay, cool. So thank you, Saurabh, for coming here. And with that, we move to the fun part of the episode, which is called rapid fire. Rules are very simple. I ask you a question, and you answer without thinking. Okay, and then we go back to each answer, and then you can, if you want to talk about them, you can. Okay, cool. Rapid fire with Saurav Mehta. Question number one: favorite Comicstaan contestant.
Uh, I think Prashasti.
One comedian you look up to.
In India, Kanan
Yeah.
Gill. In America, Dave Chappelle.
Favorite Calcutta restaurant.
Barbecue.
Recommend one stand-up special.
India, Keep It Real. I think Kanan's. And abroad, I really like all the Dave Chappelle specials and also Ronnie Cheng's. I forget the name. I think Asian
Hmm,
Destroyed America or something like that.
hmm, hmm. Best thing about dating apps.
That you can uninstall them.
Best comedian to write for.
Biswa.
One thing you want to achieve as a comedian.
A stand-up set that I can proudly show to people and not feel cringe while watching.
One investment advice to anyone who's watching it.
Believe in equity.
Favorite cricketer of all time.
Ganguly.
One advice to anyone listening to this. One advice.
Plan, but go for it.
Okay, cool. We'll quickly go back to all the answers. Favorite Comicstaan contestant, you said Prashasti.
Yes. I think reason being, I mean, okay, it's going to sound a little biased, but honestly, the list that popped in my head was Dua, Suri, and Prashasti, and all three of them are my friends. So obviously, it's a
Yeah.
little biased, but for me, just as a viewer, I think I hadn't heard someone like Prashasti in terms of
Hmm.
her point of view,
Hmm.
in terms of her take on life, and I just liked how it's storytelling, but at the
Hmm.
same time, it says so much.
Hmm.
Uh, one of the difficulties of doing stand up is sometimes you want to say things, but it's not funny,
Hmm.
and sometimes you're just funny. But I think Prashasti somehow for me gets that balance, and also her take in a way is different, but at the same time very relatable for me. She's an
Yeah.
old soul like me, so I get a lot of it, but at the same time, because of her upbringing and background and her life in general, it's very
Hmm.
fresh for me. So on Comicstaan, I think I enjoyed her stuff the most.
Yeah, yeah, so true. So true. One comedian you look up to, and this is now becoming a pattern in Random Musings. You picked Kanam Gill and you picked Dave Chappelle. Do you want to talk about them?
I mean, uh, again in India, in terms of people doing stand up just in English, there are very few choices, and that's not the reason I've chosen Kanan. But I'm saying there are very few choices,
Hmm.
and Kanan is in many ways, I think, a comedian that you'd want to be. And by that, I don't mean just in terms of the style or everything, but just the way he approaches art, just the way I've seen his specials and everything. It's in a way the closest it comes to what I would want to do with my career. Also, how he's on Instagram, you get it. He's quite irreverent. He's not like posting
Yeah.
all the time or anything. So, uh, just as a comedian, it's very aspirational, both in terms of quality of his humor and also how he goes about achieving it. And honestly, just as a viewer, he's very funny, dude. Like he's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's hilarious watching him.
Yeah.
And Dave Chappelle again, because he's in a way, and I'm not saying I have his style, but he's in a way the closest. that I have seen to my like on stage style. Like, you know, I'm also very cocky. I'm like, guys, I am the best. Don't get it. Like, come on, okay. And I love Dave Chappelle for that. He's very himself. You know, this is a cliche amongst us comedians, right? Find your voice. When I see Dave Chappelle, I'm like, man, he's really found his voice. He says what he wants to say, and even the say most politically incorrect things or correct things, he says it, and at the same time he makes it funny.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
for me is just very, very inspirational.
Favorite Calcutta restaurant? You said barbecue.
Yes.
Where is?
Barbe-
How come I've never been to barbecue?
Barbecue is on Park Street.
Okay.
It's right next to, I mean, Mocambo and everything is there, where it's
Yeah.
essentially on that main Park Street.
Yeah.
And I love Park Street because, again, it's just, I love barbecue because a lot of my childhood memories are there. As friends, we used to go there, eat a lot, and I just really love their food. I love their naan, paneer butter masala. I'm a vegetarian, and barbecue is also connected to this flavors of China. It's one whole restaurant only, so you can order starters from there. These are just tips now. These are just food tips now.
Yeah.
Order the Chinese from Flavor of China, and then for the main course, stick to Indian from there, and it's really good. I'm surprised you haven't been there.
Yeah. Maybe because there are
There are,
non-vegetarian.
yeah, yeah. No, you'll get good non-vegetarian there also, but like I mean, there are one. That's the good thing about Calcutta. There are so many places.
That's true. Okay, I wanted you to recommend one stand-up special, and you again keep it real and Dave Chappelle, which I
Yeah.
think you already talked about. Unless you wanna talk something about the specials as such.
I again with both of them, I like how it's actually a special. Like
Hmm.
it is a special. It's not
Hmm.
just stand-up sets a lot of times,
Hmm.
and even if it's just very funny, dude. Like I mean, at the end of the day, cut everything out. It's just very funny.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
the other one that I mentioned, which was Ronnie Cheng's, I think
Yeah.
it's Asian Destroys America or something like that. Again, for me, it was very close to my style,
Hmm.
and just very funny. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
everything said and done, eventually stand up is supposed to be funny. So I'm like,
Yeah.
these guys are very funny.
Best thing about dating apps, I asked you because we've discussed a lot
Yes,
in our conversations
yes.
about relationships and how like whatever. But you said the best thing about them is that you can uninstall them. Do you want to talk about it?
Man,
About
okay,
dating
so it's
apps?
not like I'm not on them. Okay, but I
Hmm.
have a love-hate relationship with the apps in the sense that it's not that the apps have done anything to me. It's just that I get tired of the process sometimes. It's again like talking to someone. Hi, hello, what do you do? Oh, you do this? Oh, wow, what is your. It's just the process is a little exhausting for me.
Hmm.
So that's why I'm like, it's not like I hate it and neither am I a fan, but it's good on some days, it's bad on some days. It's just
Hmm.
boring on most days, is what I have found.
Best comedian to write for. And again, we talked about it, but the reason I asked you this is because you've written for a lot of comedians. And you picked Biswa. What makes
Yeah.
Biswa different to write for than other comedians?
Man, firstly, people love giving feedback, as you know, okay? And most feedback that you will get is bullshit. You've been on enough projects now, KV, to know this.
Yeah.
But when Biswa gives feedback, it makes so much sense. I think Biswa is one person whose strike rate when it comes to giving feedback and it making sense for me has been the highest. Like he gives feedback, I'm like, yeah, should should have done that. And second thing is, I learn a lot from him because he's again very funny. Someone who has great stand-up specials, you know, great stand-up comedian in general, and I genuinely find him super funny. So I think I learn a lot from him also when say I'm on writing projects with him.
One thing you want to achieve as a comedian, and you said something very interesting. You said you just want to achieve a stand-up set that you can proudly show to people and not be
Yeah,
embarrassed about it.
yeah,
Which of course is a topic worthy of an entire episode,
yeah.
where a lot of times we do things that we are not necessarily proud of. Sometimes we also see people doing things that we believe we know them enough to know they might not be proud of, but we still do it. So do you want to talk about it? Like, do you think your stand-up, for instance, is not something that you're proud of, or you're still achieving it, or like what is it all about?
I'm proud of my stand-up in the sense
Hmm.
that I think it's quite funny. It
Hmm.
works most of the time. Under no
Hmm.
impression that it's the best
Hmm.
or anything, but
Hmm.
I mean, now, to be fair to myself, also seen a lot of comedians in terms of being funny on stage or doing well. I think I do fairly well, but I hate seeing myself on screen.
Mm,
Okay, like
mm,
I'm one of those people who does something and then I don't want to see it unless like I have to edit it or anything like that. And like there are very few times when I go to people and I'm like, dude, see this, see a joke or see a post. So
mm.
the point is
Yeah.
that ideally I want to achieve a set where I can go to my friends or cousins or come to a comedian also and be like, guys, see this. And at that point it won't matter what you think about it.
Mm,
Like I want to reach that stage where I'm like, man, this was really good for me. I mean,
mm.
I don't care what you all think, but you see this, buddy. I am proud of this.
Yeah. I wonder why we didn't even like we were talking about looking at ourselves, and I completely we didn't address how you and I are confused sometimes by people. I, I
Oh.
can't ever forget that I was doing a show in Lucknow, and I was at backstage. I was going up, or I just finished my part, and I was going down, and someone came and said, "Big fan" and everything. And I was like, "Yeah, thanks, man, thanks, thanks." And he said, "Man, you should have won Comicstaan or something like that." And I'm like, "Oh man, this is a sort of." And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh.
thanks, man, thanks." You're like, "You're really good. Every round you were so good." And I'm like, cool, ठीक है, जाता हूँ मैं green room में. Fuck. Oh
What
man.
the funniest post for me was on Instagram, we get tagged on things, right? So one
Hmm.
day I opened a story and KV, I'm not kidding you. One person had taken a picture with you and had tagged me, and he was not going for a joke. He sincerely
Yeah,
thought that he
yeah,
had met you.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like, this is insane. Like, you can
yeah,
see now, though, at
yeah,
least.
yeah. Maybe it was the same guy, the
Maybe.
same
Maybe.
Lucknow guy.
Um, pretty sure.
Yeah. One investment advice, and again, to give people context, I asked it because you worked in finance. You also do discuss a lot of finance, and we are those people who usually play very safe with our financial decisions. And you said believe in equity. You wanna elaborate on that?
I honestly discovered like stock markets and equity a little later in life, even though like I used to do, like I wouldn't work in finance, but I was in a company which was
Mm,
finance related. And the reason I say that is um people are so scared of trying out things and everything, and money plays a very important role. Let's be honest. And I feel one of the best ways to get some sense of financial independence, be it at 30, 40, 50, 60, is if you just invest a little in stocks, just buy an index fund or anything. It will help you gain money that you wouldn't have otherwise gained. And I sincerely believe that if you let it run for a while, it'll help you achieve dreams that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to. And it's important, I
mm,
think, especially in like for our generation, because with FD rates and all barely even helping you with inflation, like beat inflation, I think this is something that wish people taught us in schools,
mm,
because dude, money is everything. People keep underplaying that money, but so many decisions, and Corona especially has taught us that there can be a year and a half, 2 years when nothing can happen. Imagine if I was doing business right now for a year and a half, my shop would have been closed. How much money can you make,
mm,
even by call or anything? So that's why just invest as much as you can in equity and let time do its thing, and
mm,
you will eventually enjoy its benefits.
mm.
My dad is
Favorite
also.
cricketer? Again, I asked because we watched a lot of cricket together. And no surprises there as a true bong. And maybe to compensate for your criticism of Calcutta earlier, you've got the Saurav Ganguly. Any words on Saurav Ganguly?
Man, Ganguly is genuinely my all-time favorite cricketer, and this is not me pandering to my base, because I love what Dada brought to our team. Do you see the change in my voice right now? There is
Mm,
passion suddenly,
mm,
okay, and this is not fake. I really love how Dada transformed our team, you know, because I was a die-hard cricket fan, still am a die-hard cricket fan, and I saw how we were clobbered in the 90s.
mm,
And there came Dada against the mightiest Australian team, and he was like, I don't care, dude. Okay. And I'm like, I really admire Dada because I am that Puchu Indian. Like a lot of times I don't have that confidence or anything. But Dada was like, "Arey, tum kar sakte ho. Just whatever it is, we'll fight." And I, there are greater cricketers. Like Sachin is a better batsman. There's no doubt about that. Okay, Dhoni might be a better captain in terms of strategic decisions and everything. Okay, Kohli is again an insane batsman, etc., etc. But Dada brought something that we didn't have. We've had great batsmen. You get it? We've had great strategic people, but Dada brought fresh attitude that we're still winning because of, I feel. I don't feel the last 2 decades we would have transformed to this Kohli of the present if there was no Dada.
So true, so true. And of course, we ended on a very uh, advisory note where I said one advice that you would give randomly to strangers who are listening to this. You said plan, but go for it.
Nowadays, basically, people are like, just blindly take a risk or they're too conservative. I feel there is a balanced way that you can go about things. There is plan a little bit. Like we touched upon it earlier also, plan a little bit that, okay, what if this fails for 2 years? Do I have enough money? Or am I even good enough to do this? Or slowly inch into things, that, okay, I'll write first. I'll go for some, shows in Calcutta before, say, just shifting to Bombay, etc., etc. So try a little bit, plan, but at the same time, don't over plan. Like go for it. I think that's what happens to us sometimes in stand up, right?
Mm,
That this is not the perfect set. अरे और
mm,
इसमें और फिर कभी कुछ मेरे जैसे डालते ही नहीं है.
mm,
So plan till a
mm,
certain extent. Don't be completely crazy,
mm.
but then go for it. You gotta sometimes, because everything said and done, we are where we are. The fact that we are having this conversation is because both of us someday were like, this is a little crazy, but I think let's go for it.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Saurav,
Thank
for
you.
coming to Random Musings and talking to us about so many things. Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.